Do you regret saving someone at the cost of your own life? The reporter asked, holding the microphone to his mouth. The camera zoomed in on Yixing's face, and an inexplicable pressure bore down on him. Yixing didn't know how long he had been struggling in the endless nightmare, but he had finally woken up. In the hospital room, the doctor and nurses spoke in words he couldn't understand. His body was completely immobile, like stone, and his parents' faces swirled before his eyes, gradually piecing together fragmented memories before the accident. He had pushed his classmate Tao away when the truck lost control, and then he was pulled under the wheels. It was worse than a nightmare, he thought vacantly. "Shenger, how do you feel?" His mother, Yulu, was leaning by the bedside, tears streaming down her face. Yixing couldn't speak. He tried to move his body and asked, "What did the doctor say about my condition?" No one spoke. "My legs don't seem to have any sensation." He tried to move his legs, but the blanket covering his lower body remained still. Yulu quietly said, "The doctor said it will take time to rest before you can regain feeling." After a brief silence, Yiman coughed twice and said, "Shenger, here's the situation. Considering your treatment and future recovery, the insurance from the truck may not be enough. Your classmate reported the incident to the school, and the principal organized a fundraising within the school. The principal also contacted the media. To raise the amount and scope of the donations, you need to cooperate with a short interview with the media." Yixing listened to these words numbly, feeling distant. His father always appeared as steady as a mountain, never seeming flustered. Yixing's world spun. The memory of being caught in the truck's wheels gradually became clearer. Lying helplessly in bed, he began to cry, feeling that everything was unreal. His mother cried with him, and his father stood silently by. The noisy patients next door grew quiet, and Yixing finally understood. He was trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. "When's the interview?" Yixing asked hoarsely. "I'll make the call now." "It's in an hour," his father said firmly. Yixing carefully read it through, and the last question hit him hard. "Do you regret saving someone at the cost of your life?" "Do I regret it?" Yixing asked himself. Tears began to flow uncontrollably, and when he looked up, he saw the camera already pointed at him. The reporter gave him a thumbs up and whispered, "Crying will make the show more impactful." The camera circled the room and then focused on the reporter. "Just a few days ago, our city had a heroic young man. He risked his life to save his classmate, but unfortunately, he was caught under the truck's wheels. Now he lies behind me, awaiting further treatment." Yixing listened to the reporter's impassioned report, mechanically answering the questions according to the preset answers, like a student reciting lessons, but in his mind, the last question kept echoing. "Do you regret saving someone at the cost of your life?" the reporter asked, holding the microphone to his mouth, and the camera zoomed in on his face. An inexplicable pressure weighed down on Yixing. The reporter's encouraging look urged him, and his mother's tense expression watched him closely. He had to speak. "No, I don't regret it, because I saved my classmate." Such a touching story. The reporter wiped away a tear. This young man, who put his life on the line to save his classmate, is from a poor family. He is kind-hearted, courageous, and selfless. We cannot let such a hero face these huge medical expenses alone. In addition to the donations from our station, we hope those of you watching at home will also contribute. The interview ended, and the reporter left behind 50,000 yuan in donations. The nurse replaced his foredrip and massaged his legs for 10 minutes. Everything returned to silence. Perhaps moved by the reporter's emotional narration, Yixing felt a little positive energy slowly building up inside him. He was still alive. Except for his legs being temporarily numb, everything else was fine. He could recover, and he had saved his classmate. There was nothing too difficult about this. He was a naturally optimistic person, and he liked to look forward. 3 days passed, and his legs still had no sensation. The nurse repeatedly massaged his legs through the blanket, and he felt a huge emptiness in his heart, unseen yet painfully real. His heartbeat suddenly quickened. Once again, when the nurse massaged his legs, he said, "Can you get me a glass of water?" The nurse turned to get it. Yisheng suddenly pulled off the blanket. The nurse tried to stop him, but it was too late. Where his legs should have been, there were 2 pillows. He had been amputated. Yisheng felt his world spin. Cold sweat burst from his body, and his stomach churned. With all his strength, he let out a heart-wrenching scream. The emptiness in his heart was revealed for what it truly was, a deep, unfathomable abyss. "I regret it so much." The window shuddered at his roar. No one dared to disturb him. Yisheng cried until he was exhausted, fell into a deep sleep, and when he woke, he found a book beside his pillow, Shi Taisheng's Eye and the Temple of Earth, with Shi Taisheng sitting in a wheelchair, gazing into the distance. Yisheng put the book down. The wheelchair pierced him. Yi Man, peeling an apple, said, "Look at this. Learn from his perseverance." "I don't want to. You have to face reality. I've already prepared the wheelchair for you. Rehab training starts this afternoon. I won't sit in the wheelchair." Yi Man pushed the apple pieces into Yisheng's mouth, then placed the book back into his hands. "Look at this book. After all, you're a college student. You should have the integrity of a scholar. Enduring hardship with a sense of humor and facing reality, that's the essence of being a true man." "I'm not reading it." Yisheng pushed the book away. The donation amount had increased for a few days, but then it stagnated. The enthusiastic reporter returned for a follow-up interview. This time the camera focused on his empty lower body. The donation amount surged dramatically, and it seemed like the whole society suddenly took notice of this young man who lost both his legs while saving his classmate. Even though Yisheng deliberately avoided looking at any news, he could tell just how far the story had spread. Every day, there were people visiting him, and just responding to them drained all his energy. The total donation he received had reached 10 million yuan. After the crowd had dispersed, his father sat beside his bed and handed him a book. "Take a look." "What's the point of looking? I'm already crippled." A physical disability doesn't mean a mental one. "I'm crippled, both physically and mentally. So what?" That's why you should learn the spirit of perseverance, the spirit of gripping life by the throat, no matter the hardships. Every time I see Shi Taisheng, I get annoyed. I don't want to imagine myself in a wheelchair like him. All right, let's change books. The biography of giants, how the steel was tempered. Which one do you want to read? I don't want to read any of them. Yi Man opened a book and began reading aloud. A person should not pursue the length of life, but the quality of it. Yisheng grabbed both books and threw them out the window. Yi Man then opened a computer and placed it in front of him, playing an episode of Kai Jiang Liao, Let's Talk. Watch this episode. Xie Boyo, who has both legs disabled, still climbed Mount Everest. He said life is not just about one summit. The mountains won't disappear just because of your cowardice. Are you annoying? Yisheng suddenly pushed the computer away. What exactly do you want from me? Yi Man stood up in anger. What do I want? I want you to pull yourself together. What if you lost your legs? You're still alive. You still have your mind. How many people become vegetative after a car accident, unable to speak, or have brain injuries, struggling to understand even the simplest things? How many others live in poverty due to illness, living their whole lives in misery? Compared to them, you're incredibly lucky. You have 10 million in donations, so you don't have to worry about medical bills. You have a family that loves you, so you won't be alone. Why can't you focus on the blessings in all this misfortune? Look at that war hero Zhu Yanfu. He lost all his limbs. One of his eyes was blind, but he still went back to his hometown and led the villagers to fight poverty. It took him 7 years to write the book Extreme Life. Look at Zhang Lili, who sacrificed her legs to save students. She went on to get into Beijing Normal University for graduate school, specializing in special education, and has been actively involved in caring for vulnerable groups. Now she's even a member of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC. Look at Lu Hong, who suffered brain nerve damage since childhood, couldn't even speak properly, but still started his own factory, solving his own employment problems and helping thousands of disabled people. There are so many people who strive against the odds. As a college student, what reason do you have to give up? Which of them had conditions better than yours? Yisheng felt like a net had descended from the sky, pressing him down, making it hard to breathe. I've given up. I'm a cripple in body and mind. When I named you Yisheng, I hoped you would be like a big tree, standing tall despite the storms and the scorching sun, flourishing no matter the hardships, Yi Man said. Itsanteroit. Yisheng shouted. You are my son. I will not allow you to stay like this. You talk about being a hero, but which hero can endure a little setback? Yisheng couldn't match his father's eloquence. His chest tightened with frustration, his anger blocking his throat, making him shake and gasp for breath. His chest felt like it was going to explode. In a fit of rage, he threw his pillow at his father. Yu Lu, with tears in her eyes, embraced Yisheng's head. Shenger, your father has gone through a lot to gather information on people who overcame severe disabilities. Please understand his good intentions. Yisheng broke free from his mother's embrace and screamed, Stop interfering with me. I just can't be strong in the face of my disability. Every time I think of being in a wheelchair, I just want to die. I regret everything now. I shouldn't have saved anyone. Yi Man turned away, deeply disappointed in his son. Yisheng bit the bedsheet, tearing it apart like a wild animal. The torrent of emotions inside him ran unchecked. Yisheng rarely peeled an orange by himself. This morning, he had specifically shaved and changed into a new shirt. The hospital room was unusually quiet. A girl sat far by the window, a laptop on her lap, her fingers tapping on the keyboard. Yisheng had been undergoing rehabilitation for 3 months, gradually adjusting to his new body. His thighs were only half left, and the doctor said that after the most advanced intelligent prosthetics were installed, he would be able to walk freely. By all rights, he should have been discharged by now and gone home to recuperate more comfortably, but Yisheng insisted on staying in the hospital. He said, the hospital's fine. But the real reason was that the hospital was closer to the school. He wanted his girlfriend to visit him more easily. Gwa, want some orange? He had peeled one for a while, silently watching his girlfriend for a few minutes before deciding to interrupt her. No, I'm writing my graduation thesis. The girl shook her head. Yisheng popped the orange slices into his mouth one by one. Since he lost his legs, Wu Gua had been visiting him less and less. He stared at the orange peel, quietly waiting for her to finish her work. In the silence, there was always a subtle tension. This feeling arose whenever his girlfriend was unhappy. Yisheng tried to guess her thoughts, his mood steadily sinking. Today, the feeling was different. Something had irreversibly changed. Yisheng couldn't help but wonder if people in hospital beds always waited for others to finish their work and then care for them. She got up and poured a glass of water before sitting by his bed. Yisheng couldn't look her in the eyes. Gwa, do you remember I promised you that after graduation, within 10 years, I'd buy a house? Now you don't have to wait 10 years after graduation. I can buy it in full cash. We won't need to pick one outside the second ring road in Xi'an. We can get one in the first ring, wherever you want. Wu Gua adjusted her hair. That's your treatment money. The treatment's almost done. I haven't spent much. Wu Gua wiped her glasses. I want to live in the south. The south sounds good. The air in Xi'an is dry. I'm tired of living here. But your family is from Xi'an. There are green mountains everywhere. A silence fell between them. Suddenly, neither of them seemed to have anything to say. Yisheng's hand started to tremble for some reason, a faint nervousness rising. The thing he feared most was approaching. The air became more suffocating, and Yisheng started peeling a second orange. Actually, your dad never thought much of me. You know that. Wu Gua's gaze was fixed outside the window. Not at all. I've been spoiled all my life. A princess, unable to endure hardship, suffering, not understanding empathy, and without humility. That's what your dad thinks of me. Ugh, he's got that problem. He still calls me an animal in his mouth. We should break up. Wu Gua's gaze no longer avoided his. She looked directly at Yisheng. Yisheng's hand stopped. Wu Gua's gaze was burning, but He couldn't bring himself to look at her. I don't want to break up, okay? Woogwa stared at the ceiling, as if recalling the last 3 years. All the plans for the future seemed to shatter at this moment. We should still break up. Yi Sheng's heart sank, his hand no longer shaking but replaced by panic. You really can't accept my disability, can you? My parents can't accept it. They don't want people to talk about their son-in-law, and the first thing they think of is that he's disabled. They don't want to see him always with that sad, self-pitying look. Not all disabled people are like that. Woogwa looked at him seriously. Aren't you like that now? Yi Sheng's mouth turned bitter. I've just become disabled. It takes time to accept it. You're a hero. I believe you can overcome it. But I can't. I'll always think of my husband as disabled, feeling depressed, self-pitying. I'm a fragile person, you know that. Yi Sheng, who was usually good at making jokes, now couldn't come up with a single funny line. Why did you wait until now to tell me? You could have said this right after my amputation. At that time, you weren't in a good state. I didn't want to make things worse for you. Yi Sheng slowly stuffed another orange slice into his mouth. The orange wasn't ripe enough, and it was so sour that it made him want to cry. You haven't come to see me in the past month. How do you know how I've been? Woogwa didn't say anything. You've been waiting for me to bring it up, right? That way, you won't have to carry the burden in your heart. If that's how you see it, I can't do anything about it. Yi Sheng ate the orange angrily, the sourness hitting his head. He ate it so aggressively that his face contorted. If you want to break up, just say it outright. You don't have to come here with your laptop. Who are you trying to impress? Do you just want me to know that I've delayed you? Woogwa looked at him with disappointment in her eyes. I've just been trying, like you, to accept this situation. Trying to fight against my parents' views, blocking out what others say. But I just can't. If my choice goes against their views, I'll be in pain. Sorry, you'll find someone who can truly accept you from the heart. Woogwa picked up her laptop and left. Yi Sheng couldn't stop the tears that had been provoked by the sour orange. They poured out uncontrollably. He gripped the bedsheet tightly, suppressing his sobs, muttering to himself, I was never a hero. He felt an unprecedented helplessness, as though the world had shrunk to nothing but him. Yi Sheng could tell it was Tao Li from the sound of the knock. Since moving back home to rest, Tao Li had been the only one to visit him regularly. His mother opened the door, and after putting down his laptop, Tao Li quickly took over and started cleaning Yi Sheng's bedroom. Yi Sheng, feeling sluggish, lazily stayed put. Today was the day of his graduation defense. Tao Li brought him a suit, some nutritional supplements, and the defense paper. Yi Sheng stared at the pile of unfamiliar academic terms, feeling like it was all a bit unreal. Not long ago, he was still a university student, but it already felt like something from a past life. His graduation project was done by Tao Li, and Tao Li had also written the paper. Every unfinished matter at school was handled by Tao Li, without complaint, working tirelessly. Yi Sheng understood his intentions, but inside, he felt very awkward. I can't memorize it. After reading a few pages, Yi Sheng gave up. It's fine. The school leaders have already given instructions. Today's just a formality. You'll definitely graduate. So, what if I graduate? The company I was supposed to work for canceled the contract when they found out about my situation. I'm still stuck at home. I can't even be a shut-in anymore. Now I'm just lying here. Tao Li avoided his gaze, looking like a child who had done something wrong and was waiting for forgiveness. You don't have to say it like that. You don't owe me anything. My life was saved by you. I'll always owe you. Tao Li's eyes were wandering, as though he had something else he wanted to say. If you have something to say, just say it. Yi Sheng was getting impatient. I'm with Woogwa now. Both our families are happy with it. We're planning to...
Tao Li started.
Woogwa. Yi Sheng stared at him. Do you know she's my girlfriend? You've already broken up with her. Tao Li said, his expression innocent. Yi Sheng's face turned dark. So, your wolfish ambitions have finally succeeded, huh? I knew you liked her 3 years ago. You've been thinking about her all these years, haven't you? No. Tao Li quickly denied. I had already given up. And then I got disabled, and your chance came. Yisheng finished the sentence for him. Tao Li looked helpless. Bro, don't think of me like that. You and her already over. She and I should have a new beginning. If you love her, don't you want her to be happy? Now, even you're trying to morally blackmail me? Yisheng shrugged off the suit Tao Li had brought. Tao Li, there's only one thing you need to do to repay the life I saved. After that, we'll have no more debts between us. Break up with her. What if I can't do it? What if I hadn't saved you? Would you even be here now? You'd be dead. Tao Li's muscles twitched on his face, and for a long time, he couldn't say a word. Tao Li's expression kept changing, as if he was in an intense internal struggle. His shoulders slumped. I'm so tired, bro. Yisheng knew why he was tired, but he didn't have the energy to comfort him now. I'm also tired. Sitting in a wheelchair every day, unable to run, can't jump. My favorite basketball is now just scrap. My life is just 2 words, waiting to die. Tao Li stayed silent, his body shaking. Yisheng looked closely and realized he was crying. Go on, Tao Li said. I don't know why, Tao Li continued, but after owing such a huge debt of gratitude, I've become so cautious. Every expression on your face tells me that this is all my fault. His breathing became more labored, and large tears flowed with his words. You can't play basketball anymore, and neither can I. Because every time I stand under the hoop, I think of you. And you can only sit in a wheelchair, never able to fight for the ball with me again. It's all my fault. I owe you so much. I feel like I've been amputated too. He wiped his tears. I know I have no right to say this in front of you, but I just can't keep living like this. The pressure is too much. My spine feels like it can't straighten. You have 10 million, enough for your treatment, but my family still took out 50,000. I know it's nothing to you, and it doesn't make up for the legs you lost, but this is all my family has, my parents' life savings. My parents have done everything they could for you. I've done everything I could for you. I've put up with your temper, handled your affairs. I've done everything I could, except dying for you. But I still want to say, I can never repay your favor. If spending my whole life is just about repaying what I owe you, then when will I ever have my own life? Yisheng listened, feeling bitterness rising inside, as if a knife was slicing through his insides. Your favor is too heavy. If I have to live the rest of my life like a dog just to make you happy, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'd rather not have this favor. Please let me go. Tao Li knelt down, bowed deeply, and then left. They were no longer friends. His mother cautiously entered the room. Shinger, don't be angry with your good friend. His father entered with a book in hand. The most important thing in life is to be loyal and righteous. Never do anything unjust. Yisheng suddenly felt everything around him was sticky, pressing down on his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. His wish to run away from home had never been so strong. After Yisheng got his smart prosthetic limb, he left home and drove away. Amid the roar of the engine, he felt a long-lost sense of freedom. He planned to leave Shaanxi, travel through Gansu, head toward Xinjiang, and then circle back to Tibet. Before leaving the province, he stopped at a noodle shop to eat. The prosthetic was still unfamiliar to him, so he used a crutch as he entered the restaurant. Not long after sitting down, 2 children started playing around him. When they touched the metal pipe inside his pants leg, they excitedly shouted, "Mom, he really doesn't have legs." The mother hurried over, slapping each child once and repeatedly apologizing. "It's fine," Yisheng said, but he felt uncomfortable. It wasn't the children's bluntness that bothered him, but the mother's attitude, as if they had crossed some unspeakable boundary. It made him uneasy. "I didn't say anything wrong," one of the children cried, upset. The mother slapped them again. "Still talking back? Is that polite? Where am I impolite? You shouldn't point out other people's pain." Yisheng felt uneasy. "It's fine. It's not that painful." Sorry. The mother bowed and dragged the child away. The other customers in the restaurant were sneaking glances at Yisheng, as though they'd never seen a disabled person before. Whenever their eyes met his, they immediately looked away, their cautious behavior making him even more uncomfortable. He wished that everyone could be like those children, that if a person didn't have legs, then so be it, without adding any extra meanings. His beef noodles were brought to the table, and the owner added a plate of extra beef. "You've got the wrong order. I didn't ask for extra beef," Yisheng said. The owner, who seemed like a kind and honest person, smiled and said, "It's for you." Yisheng felt even more uncomfortable. The noodles didn't taste right, and the shadow of the world he had just escaped seemed to follow him again. It was precisely because people treated him differently that disability became a source of pain. He didn't touch the extra beef and left the shop in a bad mood. When he entered the provincial road in Gansu, he ran into a traffic jam. It was mealtime, and people got out of their cars, complaining while eating their own food. Some people even set up barbecue grills on the cement road, planning to camp. Yisheng found it quite amusing and got out of the car to eat a piece of bread while taking a breath of fresh air. His metallic leg peeked out from his pants, glistening under the sun. A man who was grilling walked over and handed him a skewer of barbecue. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Just fate, you know?" The man glanced at his leg, just a brief look, but Yisheng immediately understood why. He was torn. If he refused, it would seem like he was rejecting someone's goodwill. If he accepted, it would feel awkward. "Here, take it, buddy," the man insisted, forcing it into Yisheng's hand. Before Yisheng could finish the barbecue, another person came over and handed him a bottle of water. At that moment, Yisheng realized how pitiful it must look, a disabled person sitting by the roadside eating bread. He hurriedly retreated into his car. "What's wrong with you people?" he muttered under his breath. He knew they meant well, they were kind-hearted, but he didn't want to accept kindness with pity. Thank God, the traffic eased up, and he got off the provincial road and onto the highway. However, just as he was about to enter the expressway, another car came from the left. He couldn't avoid it, and they collided. The other driver, instead of acknowledging his fault, got out and began to shout. As Yisheng opened his car door, the man grabbed him and threw him onto the ground. "You're a disabled person?" The man kicked his leg, realizing it only after a moment. His anger immediately dissipated. "Can't you speak properly?" Yisheng struggled to get up, humiliated and furious. The man didn't say anything, but started to walk away, unwilling to argue with a disabled person. Yisheng was furious. He grabbed the man's collar. "You want to fight, huh? Why are you running? I'll pay for the damage to your car, alright?" Yisheng was furious beyond words and threw a punch at his face. "You haven't even paid for the kick you gave me. You don't even feel it." Yisheng and the man got into a fight. Though he couldn't use his legs, Yisheng had been walking on his hands even before the prosthetic was attached, and his upper body strength was incredible. With a few moves, he knocked the man to the ground, leaving him bruised. More and more people gathered around, many of them filming the fight with their phones. Yisheng didn't care about the audience. His anger grew more intense as he continued to punch the man, cursing as he went. At this moment, he didn't care about anything else. He just wanted to fight like a normal person again. "Don't think just because you're a disabled person, I have to let you off. If you hurt me, you have to pay," the man shouted. Yisheng pulled out a wad of cash and slapped it on the man's face. "Ich pay you." Then he pulled out another wad of cash and slapped it on the man's face again. "And let me hit you a few more times." Eventually, the police arrived. After the police dealt with the situation, it was already late at night. Just a short distance from home, Yisheng had run into all these frustrating events. He felt chaotic inside, as if everyone was reminding him, "You're a disabled person." He would always be treated differently and would never be seen as a normal person again. The lights outside the car window shifted as the hours passed, but his mood didn't improve. He felt that no matter where he ran, he could never escape the giant circle called disability. Raindrops pounded against the car window. Wrapped in a blanket, Yisheng drifted between sleep and wakefulness, feeling a warmth that reminded him of childhood. Those nights when thunder roared and lightning flashed outside, while the house remained brightly lit and safe from the storm. In the midst of wind and rain, there was a place where he could find refuge. The rain grew heavier, with each gust stronger than the last, as if a violent storm was sweeping across the world. He vaguely remembered that he had been too lazy to find a hotel, so he had simply slept in the car. The blanket he brought from home provided him with an unusual sense of comfort in the midst of the downpour. The car rocked like a solitary boat adrift on the sea. He had lost track of where he was and felt as though he had entered a rare and secluded place. A loud rumble jolted him awake. He glanced out the window, only to find the water rushing and the wind howling. His car had indeed become a boat, drifting on the floodwaters. It was a flood. Staring at the endless river outside, his mind went blank. A rising panic spread through him, swallowing him whole. He really had forgotten where he was. The streets were deserted, the houses scattered. The road had turned into a vast river, and no one was around to help him. He thought about waiting, as the car's body still provided some cover. But then he realized the current was about to carry him to a downhill section of the road, where mud and water were already flowing down from the hill. Once the car was washed off the guardrail, it would be a free fall. Though he had always thought about dying, now, he truly wanted to live. Calling for rescue was too late. There was no other choice. With all his strength, he pushed the car door open and jumped into the rushing water. Rather than lying there waiting for death, he might as well take a desperate chance. He had once been the champion swimmer in school, but now, in this flood, he was no better than a drowning dog. He forgot that his legs were made of alloy and could no longer push against the water. Fortunately, the alloy was hollow and lightweight, so it didn't slow him down. Using only his arms, he struggled to swim. After choking on water for a while, he finally found a new balance. Just then, he heard a loud crash from behind. Turning his head, he saw his car had been swept off the mountain road and was now free-falling. The threat of death gave him immense motivation. He swam desperately toward the nearest building and finally managed to crawl ashore. He hadn't been abandoned. A few cries echoed from a distance. 2 children had fallen into the water, being carried downstream by the rising floodwaters. His car had smashed through the guardrail, creating a gap. Once the children reached the downhill section, there would be no way out. Yisheng lay back down, staring up at the pouring rain and asking himself, "Do you still think you can save them? Your legs were lost saving people, and this time, who knows, you might lose your life. Life and death are fated. You're a cripple, and you managed to escape. That's already a miracle. You have no power to save anyone else." The children's cries grew faint as they choked on the water. The adults' shouts were heartbreaking, but they were helpless. The shadow of a large truck filled Yisheng's mind. The nightmare that he had never escaped had finally caught up with him and was crushing him. In the face of disaster, he was just like everyone else, as terrified as a child. His gaze pierced through the rain, and he saw an old man undress and wade into the flood. People, when they're about to die, still have to be stubborn, Yisheng lamented. The 2 children were being carried uncontrollably toward the mountain road, and the old man, unbelievably, was swimming toward the same place. The floodwaters surged faster than he could comprehend, yet everything seemed to move in slow motion, like a slow-motion film. Yisheng felt that part of his soul was being pulled from his body. Something was changing. Something was disappearing. The shadow of the car's tires grew larger, pressing down on him like a mountain, inescapable. As the children drifted farther away, the feeling intensified, and Yisheng vaguely realized that perhaps this was his only chance to escape the nightmare. He punched the ground, and all his hesitation disappeared in an instant. He removed the prosthetic limb that was in the way, took off his shirt, and waded into the flood. The violent current washed away everything in his mind. He swam back toward the very road he had just narrowly escaped. The closer he got to the abyss, the more at peace he felt. When he grabbed the children's arms, an electric jolt hit his soul, and the nightmare of the tires vanished in a flash. He swam tirelessly, feeling as if the floodwaters had washed through him, cleansing him inside and out. The old man was already waiting on the shore, and the 2 children had been saved. Yisheng collapsed on the ground, savoring the pouring rain, lost in boundless joy. The old man patted his face. "Young man, the flood's about to reach the doorstep. Help me pile some sandbags in front of the door. Can you stand up?" Yisheng was dazed for a few seconds before he realized, "Oh, I almost forgot. You don't have legs." The old man helped Yisheng attach his prosthetic and pulled him to his feet. The old man's grip was unusually strong. 1, 2, 3, lift. Yisheng used the last of his strength to help the old man with the flood defense work. The old man had forgotten that Yisheng had no legs, and Yisheng himself also forgot while they were working. It wasn't that his mind had forgotten, but rather, his soul had forgotten. When the 56th missed call came in, Yisheng answered it, and as expected, it was an interview request. "Fine," he agreed, "but with one condition. Don't give me a script." The interview set was bigger than he had imagined. 3 cameras were focused on him and the host sitting on a leather sofa, and there were hundreds of people in the audience. It was a talk show. "Mr. Yisheng," the host said with a bright smile, casually making small talk. "The last time you gave an interview was nearly half a year ago. The media has contacted you many times since. So, why did you agree to this one?" "Well, if I don't show up now, the hype around this matter will fade," Yisheng replied. A round of boos came from the audience, and the host's smile remained unshaken. Mr. Yi really knows how to joke. "All right, let's get straight to the point. I do have a few questions I'd like to ask you." "Go ahead." "I heard that you had a falling out with the person you saved, Tao Li, because you disagreed with him being with your ex-girlfriend?" The audience murmured. Yisheng nodded. "That's true. You've done your homework." "Half a year has passed since then. Do you have anything to say to them now? After all, one was your former lover, and the other was a friend you nearly gave your life to save." "No, once it's over, it's over. Once we've parted ways, we've parted ways. Is this some kind of reconciliation show where we hug and cry, then forgive and live happily ever after?" The boos from the audience grew louder, and security began moving through the crowd to restore order. The host's smile faltered. "All right then, next question. Do you regret sacrificing your legs to save Tao Li? Isn't that obvious?" "Of course, I regret it. I fucking regret it deeply." The audience could no longer stay seated, and a commotion began. "You're a liar," someone yelled. Yisheng stood up. "Who shouted that? Come out here. Who's lying to you?" "It's the previous media. They wrote the script in advance, and I had to answer that I don't regret it, because that's the answer you all want to hear." The noise from the audience quieted down, and Yisheng sat back down. The studio remained silent for a few seconds. "Next question," Yisheng said. "It's been reported that during the time you disappeared, you ran away from home, abandoning your tirelessly searching mother and your father, who encouraged you every step of the way. You used the donation society gave you to buy a car and went on a self-guided tour. Is that true?" "Yes." The noise from the audience grew even louder, and security struggled to keep people from standing up. "Let's not talk about whether what you did was responsible to your parents, but during your travels, there was a strong reaction online to some videos of you. I'm not sure if you've seen them." "Actually, I haven't." The host gestured, and the big screen lit up, showing a video of Yisheng fighting with a man who had cut him off on the road. In the video, Yisheng was furious, both his words and actions ruthless. The murmurs in the audience grew louder, and it became difficult to contain their anger. "Are you all stupid?" Yisheng widened his eyes in disbelief. "What's so hard to understand here? He cut me off first, and he started the fight. What's wrong with me fighting back?" The audience ignored his words, only focusing on condemning him. "You're no hero at all. Exploiting your disability. You've been deceiving us all along. You're just a sympathy-seeking fraud." You should have died under the wheels back then. Yi Sheng also stood up, not backing down an inch. When did I ever claim to be a hero? That's something you all imposed on me.
So what?
I curse? What's wrong with that? Seriously, are you all blind or stupid? He's the one at fault. It took the production team 5 minutes to calm everyone down. The host wiped his sweat and said, Mr. Yi, even if he was at fault first, you could have called the police. Fighting back wasn't a wise choice. I get it now, Yi Sheng said, his tone sharp. You all want to see a vulnerable, disabled person who can only cry or call the police. You can't stand a disabled person who dares to fight back, even more so one with a stronger presence than a normal person. That's the image of a disabled person that you want, but I won't fit into that mold. The host continued, Let me ask you another question. The money you spent, was it from the donations given to you by society? Yes, Yi Sheng admitted readily. Mr. Yi, have you considered that using the large sum of social donations for such personal indulgences is a betrayal of society? Betrayal of what? Did you set the purpose for this money when you donated it? Because I didn't know. Who, when donating, ever stated that the money had to be used for specific purposes? Anyone who did, stand up now. No one stood up, but the host persisted, but using that money to help more disadvantaged groups would have been more valuable. You had the ability, so why didn't you do that? Because I'm not obligated to. If you all donated with that intention, you might as well have given it directly to other disadvantaged groups. Why give it to me? You give it to me, and then assume its purpose. Have you ever considered that this is moral coercion, an unspoken rule? From the audience, someone shouted, Refund the money! Refund the money! Refund the money! Yi Sheng responded, Fine, as long as you give me my legs back. He ran a hand through his hair and lit a cigarette. Sir, this is live broadcast. Is smoking illegal? Yi Sheng calmed himself amidst the swirling smoke and slowly spoke. My father is just like you all. He wanted to see a strong hero with a determined will, someone who could face pain, overcome obstacles, and be positive. He demanded that of me every day. I know he meant well, but this approach didn't allow me to have any negative emotions. Just like I had to say that I didn't regret it in front of the cameras, that only satisfied him and all of you with your moral judgment. That's why I ran away from home, to get some air. You might think of him as a positive, great, and strong father, but to me back then, he was harsh just like his name. What I needed then was someone like my mother, someone who would accept me, let me cry, let me vent. She was like the rain, giving me the quiet space I needed to heal. The audience surprisingly remained silent, as still as a classroom of students. Even the people who had been angrily yelling at him earlier had quieted down. I don't have the right to criticize you all for moral coercion because I've done the same. I asked my girlfriend, Wu Gua, to stay with me, even after I became disabled. Why did I think she had to? After thinking about it, if I were in her shoes, I'd probably do the same. She's just a normal person, and she's blameless. Yi Sheng finished the first cigarette and took out a second one. Tao Li's situation wasn't easy either. His family gave everything to repay me, but this debt of gratitude is like the constant pressure some parents place on their children. It can never be repaid, no matter what. He got tired and had to escape. Cutting ties with me was better than owing me a lifetime. The room fell silent again as Yi Sheng slowly smoked the second cigarette. The host spoke again. There's one more video. Go ahead, let me see what other crimes I've committed. On the contrary, this video shows you rescuing people during the floods in Lanzhou. There happened to be a surveillance camera at the location where he got out of the water, capturing everything. You say you regret saving people, but why do it a second time? This time, if things went wrong, you could have lost your life. Don't make me sound like some great person. I just wanted to reconcile with myself. I didn't save just that child, I saved myself too. Saved yourself? What does that mean? Who knows? Along the way, most things weren't happy, and the scenery was pretty dull, but as the journey went on, I felt a little stronger than before. My father always taught me to be like a big tree with abundant branches and leaves, full of vitality, able to withstand the storms and thrive. But I'll never learn that. On a path where no one is in charge, I've actually become tougher. Maybe being wild is stronger than being raised in captivity. Laughter erupted, and the atmosphere lightened. So, I think wild vitality is better. The host nodded. Last question. How do you think a disabled person can overcome the shadows of the past and face life head-on? Yisheng thought for a long time before replying. How would I know? I'm not sure I can even get out of it myself. Sorry to disappoint you, but I can curse people with this mouth, but don't expect it to give you any grand wisdom. He flicked the cigarette butt away, then thought about lighting another one but decided against it. That day, lifting sandbags with the old man in the heavy rain, I was really happy. If I can have such happy moments, maybe life isn't so bad after all. The audience forgave him and began clapping. The first person to lead the applause was actually the one who had shouted for a refund earlier. Yisheng found it quite amusing. Yisheng impulsively decided to attend a few sessions of the disability support group. After all, he still had a few days before he could take his new car on the road, so there was no harm in going. The group meetings were exactly as dull as he imagined. The volunteers passionately recited motivational speeches, followed by disabled members sharing their life stories, much like a kindergarten session. Yisheng looked at their eyes, numb and full of self-doubt, and thought to himself, if these meetings were held every day, anyone would be depressed. No matter how bright the lights were in the room, they couldn't shine on their eyes. There was only one girl whose eyes showed a hint of life. Like a little cat, she was Vingat sensitive and aware of every gaze directed at her. Yisheng knew why. She had lost both her arms. It took 2 hours before the break finally came. As soon as the volunteers stepped off the stage, the room fell silent. There were snacks and bottles of drinks in front of each person, but the disabled members rarely interacted with each other. They ate their snacks and drank in silence. The girl sat still like a sculpture, not moving an inch. Yisheng was the only one to leave his seat. He opened a window for some fresh air, walked around a bit, then finally sat next to the girl. I love drinking fruit juice with pulp. Can I pour a bit from your bottle? The girl looked at him in surprise and nodded. Yisheng pulled out 2 disposable cups from somewhere, stuck in 2 straws, opened the bottle cap, and poured the juice into both cups. Cheers. He gently clinked the 2 cups together and took a loud sip. The girl watched him for a moment, then leaned over and drank the rest of the juice. She was thirsty. I like fruit juice with pulp, too. Why are you coming to such a boring meeting? Because my parents insisted I get out and walk around. I had nowhere else to go, so I came here. What about you? I'm just waiting to pick up my new car. It's boring. Where are you going to drive? Tibet. Why? Tibet is the furthest from my home.
Oh.
In the following days, Yisheng came to the meeting every day and sat beside the girl. Her seat remained empty beside hers, as though they had made an unspoken agreement. Every time, Yisheng brought 2 straws. Why do you always stare at me? The girl asked. You're beautiful. The girl froze. Where am I beautiful? Your legs are beautiful. You are a pervert. She gave him the cold shoulder for a while, then said, Usually, people only notice that I've lost my arms. Their first glance always goes there, and they quickly move their eyes away. If they can avoid looking at me, they will. Her tone was sorrowful. Yisheng quietly listened, and at last he said, I'm leaving today. This is the last time we meet, so I just wanted to say goodbye. Today? Yes. They sat silently. For the first time, Yisheng wished time would pass more slowly. I want to travel with you, the girl said. Stop joking.
I'm serious.
Why? Because of the glass of fruit juice with pulp you poured for me. Here, I'm the only one without arms, so no one thinks I need help opening the bottle, or a straw to drink. I don't like asking others for help, so every time I need a drink, I can't get it. But you are different. You helped me in a way that didn't make me feel hurt. The wind blew in through the window, carrying the scent of mud from the road below. It was starting to rain. You don't even know my name, and you're willing to go with me? I know. Your name is Yisheng. You're a hero who saves people. Oh, almost forgot. I'm famous. My name is Mengya. I, too, want to run away from home, just like you. Yisheng thought for a long time, then waved his hand. Don't imitate me. I'm not a good role model. He stood up and left early. Mengya gazed longingly at the pouring rain outside the window, continuing her aimless daydreaming. The support group ended, and she sat there waiting for her parents to pick her up. Suddenly, a drenched person, panting heavily, rushed to her side. Isn't it just about taking you away? What's there to be afraid of? Yisheng said, his face determined. My dad's car is about to arrive. My car is downstairs. Yisheng extended his hand. Shall we go? I don't have arms. How can I hold your hand? Oh, you forgot. The girl jumped up. What are you waiting for? Hurry up. On the rain-soaked street, with pedestrians avoiding them, the two young people leapt into the car, rushing away as if escaping. The rain that day was as heavy as the flood in Lansao. I'm thirsty. Yisheng handed Mengya a bottle of fruit juice. Here. He realized she didn't take it, so he quickly added, Oh, I forgot. You don't have arms. Mengya kicked him in the leg. You can't hurt me. My legs are made of titanium alloy. I forgot. After the rain, seeds would always sprout. The snow-capped mountains stretched endlessly, and the vast wilderness seemed to go on forever. The sky above was a seamless expanse of white clouds. Yisheng had never realized how beautiful nature could be. He had reached the end of his journey, Tibet, and there was now one more person beside him. Do you know how many disabled people there are in the whole country? Mengya asked, gazing at the rolling snow-covered mountains. Hyun. Yisheng guessed. No. 10 million.
No.
Then how many? 85 million. That many. You're surprised because, before you became disabled, you rarely came across any disabled people, right? That's true. Do you know where all these disabled people hide? That's easy to guess. Mengya said, some are lucky enough to see the snow mountains and lakes, while others aren't so lucky. They can't escape the four walls of their homes. More of them are just waiting for a chance to step out. That's true, Yisheng said, sitting next to her, reminiscing about the strange encounters they had along the way. We're both lucky. Your destination for running away from home is here. Where to next? Mengya asked. Yisheng thought for a moment. Back home. And then? Well, since no company wants to hire me, I might as well start my own business and use the rest of the money to give other disabled people a chance. The road here is blocked, Mengya said, pointing with her foot to a large pit that had appeared out of nowhere ahead. I was planning to get closer to the snow mountains. Then we'll go around it. But there's only one road. As long as you can get past, you've created a new path. All right, take me there. But I can't get through, so we should just head back. Mengya kicked him. Stop talking nonsense. I told you your kick doesn't hurt me. My legs are made of titanium alloy. I forgot, she muttered. The engine roared to life, and they drove down a newly formed dirt path.